Sites are marked by these poles. We're testing a few different sites to compare the quality of the water from the source, over in the dam, and then where the water's coming out in the river. First, we have to rinse the test tubes a couple of times to make sure they are clean and won't affect the samples. We have 4 test tubes, 1 for each test. So we fill them all the way up and we put the caps on top. Making sure we get a full sample. Each of the 4 samples have to be tipped down to the line, which is 5 milliliters. Do it slowly and carefully. And put the cap back on. Test 1, pH. pH measures how acidic or basic the water is. If the water is either too acidic or basic, it will kill the fish. Test 1, pH. Add 3 drops of pH test solution, holding the bottle vertically. 2. Put the cap on. And turn upside down and back 3 times. If pH is very high, about 7.6, we'll do the high range pH test to get a more accurate measure. Test 2, ammonia. Ammonia comes from fish urine, solid waste and leftover food. Ammonia is really toxic for fish. Test 2, ammonia. Put 8 drops of ammonia test solution 1. Also put 8 drops of ammonia test solution 2. Then we put the cap on and we shake it fast for 5 seconds. Now we have to wait 5 minutes, so we'll put it back in the tub. Test 3, nitrite. In a healthy system, ammonia is broken down into nitrite, but this is also toxic for fish. Test 3, nitrite. Add 5 drops of nitrite test solution. Put the cap back on and shake fast for 5 seconds. And this one we also have to wait 5 minutes. Test 4, nitrate. Nitrate is the final stage of the nitrogen cycle. Nitrate is not toxic to fish, but high levels can act as a fertilizer and cause algal blooms. Test 4, nitrate. Add 10 drops of nitrate solution 1. Next we add nitrate test solution 2, which we have to shake vigorously for 30 seconds. This is also 10 drops. Put the cap on and shake fast for 1 minute before you leave for 5 minutes and compare with the color chart. After waiting 5 minutes, we'll compare the samples with the color chart. Place it on the white part of the chart next to the respective column. Test 1 looks about a 6.8 pH. Test 2 for ammonia gives us 0.25 parts per million. Test 3 for nitrite gives us 0 parts per million. And test 4 for nitrate gives us 5 parts per million. Don't forget, we have to write this data down in the data sheets provided. After the data has been recorded, we need to rinse out the test tubes for next time. Take the caps off and pour them onto the grass. Now we have to rinse them out with the water. Put the caps back on the tubes and make sure everything goes back into the test kit.
Okay. Phosphate is a fertilizer that can contribute to algal blooms, which can negatively impact fish health. So we're going to use this kit to sample phosphate. In the kit we have a vial which is used to collect the water sample. We have 2 reagent bottles which are used to mix in with the sample to determine the amount of phosphate, and we also have a phosphate chart which you can compare your sample with to measure the amount of phosphate. Okay, so we're now using the sample we've collected, add in 6 drops from the phosphate bottle 1 reagent. So we unscrew the top off that, add in 6 drops, place the cap back on, invert the sample 5 times. Okay, immediately after adding the 6 drops from the first bottle and shaking, we add in 6 drops from the second reagent bottle. Phosphate bottle 2, add 6 drops. Place the cap back on, again invert the sample 5 times, and then leave the sample for 3 minutes to determine the level of phosphate. So after 3 minutes we've got our sample, comparing it with the phosphate colour card. You can see that the sample is very light, which is it's representative that there's a very low amount of phosphate in the sample. It's definitely not a high amount, as the sample would be a lot darker than it currently is. So I would record this sample as 0 ppm or parts per million.
This is a turbidity tube used to measure how dirty the water is. Inside at the bottom is a black and white disc, which we look at from above through the water to determine how dirty the water is. We fill up the tube all the way to the top. We look inside from the top. If we can't see the disc, then we pour it out slowly until we can. When we can see the disc at the bottom, we look at the reading on the side of the tube. This is at 60 NTU.
This is a dissolved oxygen meter that measures temperature and dissolved oxygen, which is important for monitoring water quality, which is important for maintaining fish health. Let's see what's in the kit. got a protective case here that the kit and all its equipment comes in. Open that up. Okay, so this is the dissolved oxygen meter, which measures the amount of dissolved oxygen in the water and the temperature of the water. This is the cord which connects to the probe, which is what you use to put in the water to measure the dissolved oxygen and temperature readings. So we've got an electrolyte, and this is important to moisten the probe every time the meter is used. We've got a USB cord, which is used for charging the meter when the battery runs out. And we've also got replacement probe heads in case the current probe head becomes damaged for whatever reason. And we've also got a leaflet here which runs through all the instructions on how to use the meter and any questions that you might have on its use. Now we're going to run through how to use the meter in a pond that we've got here. So we'll just come over. Okay, so the first thing to do is unscrew the probe head. And what we need to do now is gently put the probe down so it's not damaged. Take off the cap of the electrolyte and roughly apply 3 or 4 drops of the electrolyte to the inside of the probe head, like so. Then have a look inside the probe head and make sure there's no air bubbles, which there isn't. If there is, just gently tap the probe head or give it a slight shake to remove the air bubbles. After this, screw the probe head back on gently. And if there's any electrolyte that flows out of the probe, just lightly dab it with a tissue or a cloth to clean it. Okay, we're going to run through what the meter measures. So you turn it on by holding down the power button at the top there, and you can see that the reading that's currently fluctuating is the dissolved oxygen reading, and below it we've got the temperature reading. Okay, now we're going to show how to use the probe. So what we do is we put the probe into the water so the probe head's immersed, and then the way this probe works is that you need to constantly be moving it around so it's got access to flowing water. And looking at your meter, approximately after about 30 seconds, it should give you an accurate reading of dissolved oxygen and temperature. Okay, after 30 seconds of measuring, you press the hold button, which is also the power button, but just tap it like that, which will give you your dissolved oxygen reading and your temperature reading, which you can record. Okay, Okay, so once you've recorded your dissolved oxygen and temperature readings on the meter, you can take the probe out of the water, remembering to take care with the probe head as you don't want to damage that. And just gently with either tissue or a piece of cloth, just gently dry the probe and dry off the probe head by dabbing it. And then just place it back in this protective bubble wrap so the probe head and the probe is protected while it's being stored. Okay, so you need to calibrate the meter roughly every 2 to 3 months. So after the meter's been turned on, the second button down, which says cal, you hold that down for approximately 3 seconds and you've entered calibration mode. For the 0 point with the calibration, we need to firstly unscrew the probe head, and the probe head and the probe itself needs to be dry. So we use tissues just to very carefully dry the electrode that the probe's attached to, the metal electrode there. And as you can see, now that it's dry, we have a reading of 0. So in order to compute that into the meter, we just press cal, and you can see it just came up there with a PAS or pass, which meant that the 0 reading was recorded for the calibration. Following the PAS message from the 0 point calibration, we can now see that the probe has automatically entered into the 1 point calibration, as shown by the 1 flashing there. So for the 1 point calibration, the first thing we need to do is refill the probe with electrolyte. So we take the cap off the electrolyte, again apply 3 to 4 drops of electrolyte into the probe head, making sure there's no bubbles inside the probe head, and if there is, slightly tapping the probe head or giving it a shake to remove the air bubbles. Then re-screwing the probe head onto the probe. The next step in the 1 point calibration is that we need to bubble some fresh water for a minute. So we're going to use a simple air pump to do this. So we simply attach this tube to the air pump, insert the tube and the air stone into this container, switch on the pump, and we bubble the water for a minute before immersing the probe. So the water's been bubbling for approximately a minute now. So now we immerse the probe into the bubbling water, and we simply leave the probe immersed in the water for about 30 seconds before calibrating the 1 point. So the probe's been immersed in the bubbling water for about 30 seconds now. So now we can calibrate the 1 point. So again, just like the 0 point, we press cal, and you can see the PAS message came up. So now the probe is calibrated and ready to be used. Now we're just going to pack away all the equipment. So we'll firstly turn the meter off by holding the power button there, so the meter's off. Turn the air pump off. We'll take the probe out carefully. Gently dry it by dabbing or wiping with tissue. And placing the probe back into the protective bubble wrap. Now the meter and the probe simply go back in the protective case. And for the air pump, we just take the tube off. And everything's packed away. When the battery level of the meter runs out, in order to charge it, you simply unscrew the top of the meter, and you'll see that there is a USB port there for charging. The meter does come with a cord which simply plugs in and to the meter and into a power source, or you can simply use your Android phone charger which will charge the meter as well.